Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get this show on the road. My job's to introduce Tim Nicholls, he's Leader of the Opposition, Shadow Minister for Arts and Major Events. Mr Nicholls began his career as a senior associate at a major Australian law firm, specialising in commercial law. He was first elected to Queensland Parliament in 2006, representing the Brisbane electorate of Clayfield. Prior to his election to State Parliament, he spent 6 years in local government as a councillor for the Hamilton ward in the Brisbane City Council. Mr Nicholls served as Queensland's Treasurer and Minister for Trade from 2012 until February 2015. Mr Nicholls was elected Queensland Leader of the Opposition in May 2016, and for the past 3 weeks has been crisscrossing Queensland on the 2017 Queensland election trail. Please welcome Mr Nicholls.
Well, thanks very much, Steve. Steve came up to me before and said, "I'm just about to introduce you. I've got this very boring resume." And I said, "Well, don't tell them everything that happens in Parliament." So he's very kindly agreed not to do that. But we might get it in question and answers. Barton, can I say to you, the 29th of October 2020, mate, I'll get back to you after Saturday on that one, if that's okay. So we'll see how we go. But I do want to thank Steve and thank you to the Queensland Press Gallery for the opportunity to be here and to talk to you today. I am actually bitterly disappointed that the Premier's not standing beside me. I had looked forward to a free-flowing debate about the issues of importance to this state. There are big issues facing our state, and we should be prepared to contest and test our ideas and also our solutions. I'm talking about jobs, the cost of living, busting congestion, and fighting crime. With the Ashes kicking off on Thursday, and good luck to Steve Smith and the team against the Poms, I can totally understand why the Press Gallery wanted to have the leaders' debate early in the week to ensure it resonates. I was more than happy to oblige, and so here I am. Then again, an absent Premier is perhaps no surprise, given that Anastasia Palaszczuk and Labor have done nothing for 3 years. And in the more than 3 weeks of this election campaign, they have failed to produce any reason or agenda for re-election. Just more fear-laden, baseless rhetoric. The most desperate of smokescreens from a do-nothing government. A government of incompetence, inexperience and self-interest. Queenslanders, if the last 3 years of wasted opportunity have not convinced you, surely this election campaign has. Next Saturday's election timing was totally within their control. Nobody outside the Labor Party had a clue. And yet the cluelessness of Anastasia Palaszczuk's campaign has only rubbed salt into the wounds of all those thousands of Queenslanders who have gone backwards under 3 years of this do-nothing Labor government. Now, I've visited Labor's website. There are only 19 policy documents on it. Only 19. We've hit 3 figures. When Queenslanders cast their votes on Saturday, they will do so with the LNP having put forward more than 100 policies. More than 100 policies. Even today, the Premier has copied our Resources Centre of Excellence policy. Another sign that the Premier is out of ideas. We've listened, we've worked hard, and we've developed the practical solutions to build a better Queensland. We're not preoccupied with the past, and we're not running around Queensland day after day trying to scare voters. That's Labor. Fear, smear and no idea. I really think it's bordering on hopelessness. It's certainly do nothing with a capital D and a capital N. We've heard the stories of Jackie Trad forcing the Premier's hands-on policy. We've heard the stories that Labor head office has been calling the shots on the Premier's travel schedule and on the policy announcements. And in the midst of an election campaign, we've heard from inside the Labor camp, rumblings about the performance of Australia's worst Treasurer, Curtis Pitt, and his likely replacement. Not to mention Anastasia Palaszczuk's backflip on the Carmichael mine, a move that within hours backfired as blatantly politically motivated, putting her own job ahead of the jobs of thousands of Queenslanders. And even today, we've seen another outburst by Joanne Miller, the Labor member for Bundamba, sacked by Anastasia Palaszczuk. Now, the only conclusion that I believe that voters can draw is that Labor itself is far more unstable, untrustworthy, divided and rudderless than any of the fake chaos they try to scare Queenslanders with. Queensland, all of this simply shows that Labor are focused only on themselves and not on you. Ladies and gentlemen, Labor's scare campaign is a lie. Frankly, it's being peddled by a Labor leader who is accustomed to lying. She's lied to Queenslanders about no deals with independence, because that's what she promised before the last election, but that's what she scurried off to do as soon as the election was over. She's lied to Queenslanders about her support for the Carmichael mine, and in doing so, thousands and thousands of jobs in regional and North Queensland. She's lied to Queenslanders by changing the voting system on 19 minutes' notice with no consultation. She's lied to Queenslanders about helping them manage the cost of living by increasing the wholesale price of power by 70%. She's lied to Queenslanders about being open and transparent, with secret reports that are covering up potential blackouts and water security issues in central Queensland. And she's lied to Queenslanders about promising to repay debt, with debt now headed to more than $81 billion. I've said it repeatedly, and I'll say it consistently, and I'll say it again, so that no one can be under any mistake. An LNP government will not sell assets, and there will be no forced redundancies in the public service. I have said this consistently since the last election, and to use a well-known phrase, I'm not for turning on this issue. For the last 3 years, Queensland has stood still, stuck in a time warp. And we all know that in a fast-paced modern world, if you are standing still, in fact, you are going backwards. And now is the time to make a change. We either grasp with both hands, grasp the future with both hands and build a better Queensland, or we stare at another 3 more years of a do-nothing Labor government. And I ask one simple question: how can you afford another 3 years of Labor? Yesterday, my Deputy Deb Frecklington and I released our fully funded state infrastructure plan. And it's a plan that will see major infrastructure built across the entire state. A plan that will create 16,500 new jobs in Queensland. Jobs in every region. A plan that can't and won't be matched by Labor, the Greens, or One Nation. And our fully funded infrastructure plan includes a recommitment to our 10-year Bruce Highway Action Plan, boosting the current budget by more than $360 million. We'll be building dams across Queensland with our $1.3 billion Dam Builder program, because we know how important water is to regional towns, regional cities and regional economies, and importantly, without water you don't have jobs. We're going to bust congestion with roads like the second M1 and the Sunshine Coast Hospital Link Road and duplicating the Sunshine Coast Rail Link. We'll also work with the Lord Mayor Graham Quirk on his congestion-busting Brisbane Metro project. And we will build better schools with a $65 million Better Schools Fund. And we'll make sure school halls are upgraded, that classrooms get properly air-conditioned, and school ovals and play equipment are maintained. And with our buy local policy, and I know the civil contractors are here today, with our buy local policy, we'll make sure local builders, plumbers and contractors have the chance to deliver on these projects, creating even more local jobs. So Queensland, I say, if you want more jobs, simply vote one for your LNP candidate this Saturday. Our Queensland-wide plan stands in stark contrast to Labor's single infrastructure project, a $15 billion rail tunnel in South Brisbane that is unfunded. Our plan also stands apart from the empty and unfunded promises of One Nation. Their commitments currently total over $18 billion. So people thinking of voting for One Nation would or should be horrified to learn that under their plan, debt will increase and fees, taxes and charges must rise. If you're thinking of voting One Nation, I suggest you rethink, because you're being led down the garden path by irresponsible candidates who have no idea what they're doing, let alone any experience in delivering. Now, I've met and spoken with many Queenslanders over the last 3 weeks. As Steve said, I've been crisscrossing the state. And they tell me that they want change. They tell me that they are not getting ahead. They tell me that they want the Queensland spirit of old again. They tell me that they want it back. A Queensland where we get out and build stuff. A Queensland that offers opportunities. A Queensland that encourages risk with the real promise of reward. A Queensland that is vibrant and future-focused. A Queensland synonymous with success. And I agree with them. It's what my team and I have been focused on. We understand voters are frustrated, and you can hardly blame them. Labor has created and done nothing to fix its rail fail. Labor's done nothing to bust congestion. They've done nothing to tackle youth unemployment in Western Queensland, which is now approaching a staggering 60%. More than 1 in 2 young people without a job. They've done nothing to build the Rookwood Weir. They've done nothing to fix the child safety crisis. They've done nothing to lower power prices for families and small businesses. And in fact, it's the LNP that's led the way. We've got out on the front foot because we've been listening to Queenslanders. We've listened and consulted widely with industry and stakeholders. In fact, many of the people in this room will have sat across the table from myself, from Deb, and from our shadow ministers, helping us map out our plans to build a better Queensland. And you all know, and I've spoken about it many times, that the LNP government that I lead will concentrate and deliver on 5 priorities. We'll create jobs right across Queensland and better manage our finances. We'll take action on the cost of living. We'll better support families. We'll create strong and livable communities, and importantly, we'll build the roads, the bridges and the dams that we need so that we can have jobs and prosperity throughout this great state. And we'll do this by growing the Queensland economy and focusing on 6 key economic areas. And these are the areas that you all know instinctively are the right places to concentrate on tourism, on resources, on agriculture, construction and manufacturing, services, science and technology, and importantly, on education. And we've already led the way. We were just talking about it at the table earlier. We've led the way with the Beep precinct, our Brisbane Entertainment and Education precinct above the Roma Street rail yards. We led the way in announcing a Queensland Academy of Sciences right here on South Bank. We led the way calling for the vital Smithfield roundabout in Cairns. We convinced the government to accept the Cairns cruise shipping project. We've led the way on a Townsville water solution, and we have certainly led the way on the congestion-busting second M1. We've led the way with changes to lockout laws. We've led the way on the Rookwood Weir outside of Rockhampton and with the duplication of the Sunshine Coast rail line. And we've made changes to our DV system, even from opposition, and we've introduced a new law to protect our youngest and most vulnerable, Mason's Law. The LNP have always been proud frontrunners and frontier breakers, and I am determined, as the leader of the LNP, to deliver again for Queenslanders. And as you can see, the team I lead today is very different. We're up for the challenge. We're ready to go. We're confident that if the voters support us this Saturday, we will deliver for them in spades. Now, I measure success solely on our ability to improve the lives of our fellow Queenslanders and to build a better Queensland. That's it. It's simple. I am determined to deliver. So I ask, why vote for a pretender? Why vote for an imitator when you can have the real thing? A genuine, united team that works in Queensland's interests, not their own, with a leader who will get on and get things done. I simply say, Queensland, that leader is me. I said on Sunday at our campaign launch that I was shocked that Anastasia Palaszczuk had done nothing on the cost of living. As a dad to 3 teenagers, and my wife Mary's here today as well, I know families across Queensland are doing it tough. I also know that the government can't solve every problem, but where it can act, it should act on the cost of living. So today, I'm launching our cost of living scorecard. It's an easy-to-read guide for voters, and it details the LNP's plan to take action on the cost of living. I know, that every little bit we do helps. Our cost of living scorecard compares and contrasts the LNP action against Labor's inaction on a range of significant savings measures. Let me start with electricity, where the LNP will save a typical family $780 over the next 3 years. Labor says it will offer a bill rebate of $50 a year over the next 2 years, but can't even say how that saving will be paid. Family car rego, where the LNP will freeze it, saving families up to $200 over 3 years. Under Labor, family car registration will continue to increase at 3.5% over twice the rate of inflation. Let me talk about sport, where the LNP will provide $150 to help families pay for a free term of swimming lessons for bubs and toddlers 1 to 4. In Queensland, sun, surf, water, our kids need to learn to swim. We know it's a cost for families. We will help meet that cost for young families with $150 vouchers, and Labor is still offering you nothing. Public transport, where the LNP will deliver free off-peak bus travel and train travel through the southeast for seniors on the Go Card network, saving them up to $720 a year. Once again, what do we see from Labor? Nothing. And still more for seniors. Half-price licence renewals for seniors, and that can save them between $35 and $86, depending on how long they renew their licence for. Labor is offering our seniors nothing. Farming families, and we know how tough it has been on the land with more than 70% of the state drought declared, and how tough it has been with the ever-increasing power bills under this Labor government. So we are offering Farmers, $1,400 transitional payments to help them invest in new pumps, new equipment, or just to manage the expenses on their bill. And we will also be taking action to help small business because we know it's the engine room of growth and jobs and opportunity, and so much of this state has been built on family-owned small businesses. So we'll be cutting payroll tax by raising the payroll tax threshold by $25,000 a year each and every year for the next 10 years. And that will help 4,000 small businesses who would otherwise fall into the payroll tax and another 10,000 businesses who currently pay payroll tax by paying less. And Labor stands by with no solution or will to fix another crisis of its making. So if you want action on the cost of living, I simply say to you again, if you want help for small business and if you want to create jobs, vote 1 for the LNP this Saturday. We'll deliver it because you know that we are the party that stands on a record of delivery. Now, I also know that there are probably many of you in the audience who would be wondering about this weekend's result, especially what if it's a hung parliament? Well, here's my answer. I don't think it will be. I don't think it will be because I believe Queenslanders want change, and they want change that will make their life better. And there's one very simple way to avoid a hung parliament, and that is by putting a 1 next to the name of your local LNP candidate. That's the best way to ensure a strong LNP government that can deliver the change that you need to help you and your family get ahead. It's the only guaranteed way that you will get the change you want in Queensland. Now, I believe we can win the seats needed to form an experienced, no-nonsense, common-sense government which will listen, which will plan, which will act, and which will get on with things. But we've won nothing yet, and I'm not one to disrespect the voters. I'll be fighting, as I have been, I'll be fighting hard each and every day between now and next Saturday for every vote I can. I truly believe Queenslanders are crying out for change and real leadership. They want a government of action, a government that will get on with the job of working in the best interests of Queenslanders. So I say again, this Saturday, I urge you to vote for your local LNP candidate because that's the only way we'll get guaranteed change. The change needed to bust out a neutral, to break the shackles of Labor's stagnation, and for you and your family to get ahead. It's a choice between an energetic, enthusiastic and experienced team with a clear plan for 500,000 more jobs and a team racked with infighting, backstabbing and disunity, and with no record to run on and no plan for the future. And I think deep down we all know Queensland's best days are ahead of us. And you know what that looks like? A brighter future for all of us, for our kids and for their kids. And I'll give you this commitment. I will lead a common sense government that does deliver. Our team will listen, we'll plan and we'll act. We'll work with our fellow Queenslanders to make your lives better. More local jobs, cheaper electricity, and the roads, the bridges and the dams we need. On this coming Saturday, together, let's build a better Queensland. Thank you.
Now we're going to take some questions from the media gallery. I'm just going to ask the first one, if that's okay. Now we're getting to this topic of deal or no deal. Been a lot of conversation about whether you do a deal with One Nation, but what seems to have kind of been missed a little bit is the Katter's Australia Party MPs, Robbie Katter and Shane Knuth. There's a good chance that they're going to win their seats. And you spoke before about some of the things that have been said across the chamber, and you once referred to Shane Knuth in Parliament as Far Knuth. So just take us through how you think those negotiations with Shane are going to go.
Well, firstly, let me say this. As I said in my speech, I'm absolutely convinced that with the policies we've got in place and the candidates we've got in place, we are in a position to win the next election. I've gone into this election, and our team has gone into this election totally committed to winning and winning a majority, because that's the only way that we'll see the jobs that we want, that we'll see cheaper power prices, and we'll see infrastructure built. We haven't had an election yet. Nothing's been won or lost. That won't be determined until after Saturday. So I'm actually focused on delivering a stable LNP majority government. I'll leave the hypotheticals, Steve, to you and to the gallery. I know it's a source of great interest, but I'll respect the voters' will. And I will engage, as I always do, with my parliamentary colleagues with the best of intentions.
You guys are up.
Nichols, in your maiden speech in 2006, you said that we should strive for the best services and government must get out of the way when those services can be better delivered by private enterprise. Given the unpopularity of some of the privatisation plans under the Newman government, which you've said you've learnt from, what is your current stance on privatisation?
Well, I've made it very clear, Charlie, as you know, that there'll be no sale of government businesses or government-owned corporations. There'll be no leasing of it, and as I said in my speech, I'm not for turning on that. Queenslanders have spoken, and I've heard that message very clearly, and I've said that consistently. I think, though, that what Queenslanders want to see is a state of opportunity, of hope. I've also spoken about that in my campaign launch 3 weeks ago. They want the opportunity for a job that they're not getting under this Palaszczuk Labor government. They want the opportunity for cheaper power prices that they're not seeing under this government. That's what I'm focused on over the course of this election campaign, and if we're fortunate enough to be supported on Saturday, that's what I'll be focused on delivering.
Do you think that's off the table forever, though? Like, is it never, ever, ever is this going to come back on the agenda in Queensland?
I think my position on it has been pretty clear, Steve. I mean, I understand what the people of Queensland said at the last election campaign. For me, it's off the table.
Mr Nichols, today the Premier has issued a challenge regarding her appearance here on Friday. She's issued a challenge for you to attend and debate her. Is that on the cards?
Well, Ebony, as I said, I was looking forward to today's debate. Today would have been a great day for it. It's not hidden away in the Ashes and the second day of the Ashes test. I was up for it when I was approached by the media gallery to come here today. I said yes straight away. I would have appreciated a debate here today. I just wonder why the Premier scurried off and hid somewhere else.
But have you got any plans on Friday?
I've got a lot of plans on Friday.
Do they involve being here?
Well, unlike the Premier, I control my own destiny. I set my own agenda, so I know what I'm doing. Perhaps she doesn't.
Michael Atkin, ABC 730. If you're forced into a minority government situation with One Nation, what sort of power and influence will One Nation have, and what sort of policy trade-offs are you prepared to enter into over, say, things like domestic violence laws and gun laws?
Well, Michael, I think I've been pretty clear on where our position is, and that is we are going into this contest with the aim of winning a majority. I believe we can win a majority. I believe our policies address the concerns of Queenslanders around the jobs that they want to see created here, about the cost of living that they go through here, and about the infrastructure that's not being built that will be built under us. So we're going into this contest with the very clear objective of winning 47 plus 1 seats in order to be able to deliver strong, stable government. And I simply say, for those people who are thinking about voting for One Nation, a vote for One Nation is a vote for another 3 years of a do-nothing Labor government. And we know that because we saw it here in 1998, we saw it here in 2001, and we've just seen it happen in Western Australia.
That is the goal. What if that goal is not possible and you do need to enter into negotiations with One Nation?
Well, Michael, nothing, as I also said in my speech, nothing's been won or lost yet. And we'll wait till Saturday, but in the meantime, if you want strong, stable government that can deliver the jobs you want, that can deliver cheaper power, and that will actually get on and has a plan, a $2.7 billion infrastructure plan supporting 16,500 jobs, then you need to support your local LNP candidate.
Isn't it too late?
All right, can we get
after election
next
day?
question, if that's all right? Pass it on, mate.
The Fin Review. Just two quick questions. I think a lot of people in the audience might like to know what your stance is going to be on political donations from property developers. Palaszczuk got rid of that. What's your response to that? And then secondly, what's the main characteristic between you and Anna when it comes to handling finances? What's the difference in your skills compared to hers?
Sure, thanks for that. In terms of donations, that legislation that was before the House has now lapsed. I note that the chair of the ACCC, Mr McSporran, has raised some significant doubts about its applicability at a state level. I'd want to go and speak to him to discuss what his concerns are, because he said it was rushed and it hadn't been properly consulted on. So I'd like to go and speak to him about that and see what he says about it. In terms of financial skills, well, I know what the GST rate is.
From the Courier Mail.
Yes,
John
Sarah.
Howard says that Queensland has too many public servants. Do you agree with him? And how will you tackle that if you're not going to have forced redundancies?
Well, Sarah, as you know, my wife is one, so I'm not going to say anything bad about it today. She's here at the table with me. But look, what we need to make sure we have is a public service that can meet the needs of Queenslanders, whether that's in health and hospitals or whether that's in education, in delivering the services that Queenslanders want. And I've made a very clear commitment there will be no forced redundancies or no increase in redundancies in the public service in a Nichols LNP government.
What does that mean for hiring, though? You could also institute a hiring freeze. You could do all kinds of things with the public service here. Is it natural growth? Is it hooking it to population like the government has already suggested?
Well, the government's fiscal principle is that the public service should grow in line with population growth, and that's a fiscal principle that they broke on the day that that fiscal principle was introduced into the parliament by Curtis Pitt in 2016. I think from our perspective, it's about making sure we've got enough of our public servants. That's why we've made a commitment for 535 extra police to keep up with population growth. That's why we've made a commitment for more therapists to work in our education services to meet the needs of the people of Queensland across the public service. So I don't think there's any one size fits all. I mean, you've got to meet the needs of the economy. You need to meet the needs of a growing population.
Ms Nichols, Lauren Day from Channel 10. Just further on that note of redundancies, just wondering if you're planning to remove operational shift allowance within the Queensland Police Force and also night shift allowance. There seems to be some concern that that's going to be the case if you win.
I wonder where that question came from, Lauren. No.
Is that guaranteed?
No, exactly.
Just another question as well. Pauline
It was
Hanson,
asked of me at the Queensland Police Union conference a while ago, and I said no then too, by the way.
Okay. And another question. Pauline Hanson was today pictured with Joanne Miller. I think she's visited her in her electorate. I'm not sure what was going on. But what do you make of that they're being pictured together? And it comes after some comments by Joanne Miller this morning that One Nation should hand their preferences to her.
Well, look, as I said in my speech, we know Labor are hopelessly divided. They can't agree on whether they want to support the Carmichael mine and regional jobs in Queensland. We know they can't agree amongst themselves on the positions. They haven't even appointed a full-time agriculture minister since Bill Burns stepped down. Joanne Miller has been, I think, one of the most vocal critics of her own government and has been so again today. This is a Labor government that is racked with internal divisions, a Premier who doesn't have authority to lead, and she's being undermined by her own backbench and her own backbench members, a former police minister who she sacked. I think the other thing about Lauren is it just goes to show the complete lie that is being peddled by Labor in relation to any form of deals or arrangements when you look at what's going on between Joanne Miller and Pauline Hanson there in Bundamba.
From the Brisbane Times, Ms Nichols, what would an LNP government do to ease congestion in the South East Queensland rail corridor?
Sure. Ruth, one of the biggest things that we believe will help ease congestion is the Brisbane Metro project, which Graham Quirk's undertaking, and that's why we've made a $30 million commitment not only of land but of additional funding to extend the Brisbane Metro. It's a project that's got approval from Infrastructure Australia, or endorsement, I should say, from Infrastructure Australia, that will bust congestion. The next thing I'd like to be able to say in relation to rail in the southeast corner is we're going to actually get the trains running. We've seen the worst rail fail in Queensland's history. We've seen trains not turning up, trains delayed, passengers left behind, 2 million fewer passengers riding on the trains, according to the latest official statistics from October this year than the year before. I think the first thing we need to do is actually get the rail network up and running, and that'd help ease a lot more congestion.
Cross River Rail, though? What about Cross River Rail?
Well, we've said in relation to Cross River Rail that we haven't seen the full business case. It's too important a project in terms of the spending that's required for it to rush into without having a full understanding of the business case. And of course, it's not fully funded. So it's only funded in the budget for about a half of the actual total cost of it. So it doesn't stack up on Infrastructure Australia's assessment of it. We haven't seen the business case, and we believe it's too important to get wrong.
Would the LNP government commission their own business case for Cross River Rail?
Well, we haven't even seen the existing business case, so we don't know what the faults are. We know Infrastructure Australia have, and they have raised significant concerns around the benefits of it. And so we'll have a look at that business case and see what it says.
But you've got to acknowledge, though, that a second crossing from the south into the city is essential at some stage.
Yep, no doubt. We've said all along a second rail crossing across the Brisbane River is going to be required. The Infrastructure Australia report says it's not required until at least 2026, and it's a matter of prioritising where your funds go.
So 2026 then?
I didn't say that. I just said that's what Infrastructure Australia said. We need to see the business case to understand exactly where the problems are. But obviously there are big problems if Infrastructure Australia hasn't given it the tick, bearing in mind that they have given the Brisbane Metro the tick. I can't quite hear you, Katrina. Sounds like a press conference. I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part, Katrina. You had who?
Jason Costigan was pictured with Harry Black, the Whitsunday One Nation candidate today.
Right.
What's your thought on that?
Well, I don't know the circumstances of what he was pictured doing or any of those sorts of things.
Well, I don't think he was doing anything too bad, but I think they were being pretty friendly. not that friendly. Costo's not that kind of guy. But
must have been a good picture. Look, I've made it abundantly clear. There are no deals. I've made it abundantly clear that it is only the LNP that can deliver the jobs, and in the seat of Whitsunday, where we've made commitments to the flood-proofing of the Hamilton Plains Road, $10 million going into the Gorganga Plains Bruce Highway upgrade study, that the only people who can deliver in that part of the world are the LNP. Look, there will be, there are all sorts of weird and wonderful scenarios that can be put to me. I simply say, though, if you want to see a solid government that can actually deliver on a $2.7 billion infrastructure program, the LNP is the only team that can deliver that.
Mr Nichols, Sonia Colbarker from AAP. Sonia. You have ruled out a number of things when it comes to paying for your election commitments. Can you say what exactly you won't be ruling out and how you will do that at the same time as stabilising debt?
Scott Emerson will be able to do that for you on Thursday afternoon, Sonia, as I've said on many occasions.
Hundreds of thousands of Queenslanders, however, have already voted and will continue to vote prior to Thursday. Don't you think that they deserve to know how you're going to pay for everything?
I think those Queenslanders want to know what we're doing to create jobs for them, what we're going to be doing to drive down the power prices, which are hurting families and small businesses, what infrastructure we're going to invest in to create the jobs that those Queenslanders want in their communities. They want to hear from us how the government can give them a hand up, and that's what I've been talking to them about. And our process is the normal process that goes through after we've finished making our commitments, so it'll all add up.
What about debt, though? Where are you headed there? You've spoken about stabilising it. What does that even mean?
Well, what I've said is that under the LNP and under our costings, debt will be less than the projected $81.1 billion that Labor are currently projecting in their latest budget. So the debt under us will be less. What I've also said is that we will stabilise the debt over the economic cycle, and we'll do that by running a fiscal balance. But we're not going to cut off our noses to spite our faces. It's creating jobs, creating prosperity in the economy, and growing the economy over time that is going to make the difference to our capacity to be able to pay down debt.
But a fiscal balance over the next few years is billions of dollars to try and get that back into balance. Some of those years, they're $3-4 billion kind of fiscal deficit forecast into the future.
Some of them are a bit less than that, I think. So it goes up and down, and we will manage it up and down because, look, we're a trade-exposed trading economy. Things such as the price of coal or the demand for our agriculture and our resources will make those impacts. And what we'll need to be able to do is to balance that to make sure that we are protecting jobs, that we are seeing the economy grow and prosper, and that's what we'll do.
Mr Nichols, Rebecca Livingston from ABC Radio Brisbane. You mentioned that you're the dad of 3 teenagers, I think 2 of whom can vote, maybe at least one.
One?
One and one almost.
And he already has. That's
Right.
a pretty good feeling to have your
He didn't
oldest
wait
son
for the
vote
costings?
for you for the first time.
He didn't wait for the costings?
He sent me a note and said, Dad, I'm here with a couple of mates, what should we do? And I said, just, go for it, mate. Put Nichols first and after that you're okay.
I hope you didn't say just vote one like you did before. Because
As much as you'd probably like people to think that your children agree with you 100% of the way, can you think of a moment during this campaign where perhaps one of your children has given you some robust or honest advice on which direction you should go on a particular issue? And if you can't, are they in favour of coal and casinos as part of Queensland's future?
Well, Rebecca, I wish it was only once that I'd had a robust debate with my children. Let me tell you that over
Tell
the
us
last
about
3
one
weeks.
in specific terms.
So 18, 17 and 14-year-olds. And we've always encouraged them to have their own views. And we've had debates on all sorts of things and about all sorts of issues from, the Carmichael mine, to other things such as the true meaning of the Anzac legend and what it means to Australia. So we've had those debates over the last 3 weeks. The most interesting one is dealing with my middle son who's at school. He's about how often he should check in and when he should do it. So those have been some of the debates that we've had over that period of time. They're all interesting, they're all fine young children, and they've all got very strong views, and I'm grateful for Mary for doing most of the work over the last decade or so to make sure they've turned out so well.
Is there anything you're not doing or not championing that one of your children would like you to?
Oh, well, they're young people. They've got a very different perspective on the world. And
it'd be great if you had a specific response,
I think they'd like me to understand their music a whole lot better and bring out a whole lot more young acts to play in Queensland as part of the arts portfolio.
Watch out, I'll ask you your favourite AC/DC song.
What was that?
Favourite AC/DC song, I think she said.
Oh, favourite AC/DC song. Oh, well, I got a stack of them. But the great album was the great album was Back in Black, and I'd have to say you can't go past the anthem. You shook me all night long.
Well done.
It certainly isn't Jailbreak.
Any more back there? No, I think we'll... Yeah, ask another debt question, Sonia.
Are you essentially telling Queenslanders to blindly trust you? And isn't that dangerous considering how unpopular you were as Treasurer?
Sonia, what we've actually done is map out our fiscal principles in the document that you received on the first day of the election campaign, where we committed to reducing payroll tax and increasing the threshold by $25,000. We set out the fiscal principles, and I think if you look at those fiscal principles, they are sound fiscal principles that any government should adhere to, and that is maintaining a competitive tax basis, it is maintaining a fiscal balance, it's stabilising debt over the economic cycle, and it's not going on to raid the superannuation funds and the long service leave of public servants, which have all been done, which has been done by Curtis Pitt. He never told anyone that he was going to take $5 billion out of superannuation funds, stop paying superannuation contributions, raid the long service leave, load up the GOCs with debt so they're paying higher interest and paying higher power bills. We've been very clear about it, and we've only seen, as recently as yesterday, that the Labor Party believe that they can spend the dividends of the GOCs 3 times. I mean, that is fairies at the bottom of the garden stuff.
They have concentrated on general government sector debt and done a pretty good job lowering that from what the projections were in the 2014-15 MIFA, though. Do you acknowledge that tackling general government sector debt should be the priority?
Absolutely not. It is the total debt that the state owes that every taxpayer in Queensland is on the hook for. The Treasurer of Queensland signs a guarantee on behalf of every single taxpayer on every single government-owned corporation, and just shuffling the deck chairs around on the Titanic doesn't solve the problem. Loading up the GOCs, particularly the electricity generators, with more debt and insisting they pay 100% dividends means that they've got less money to reinvest into capital infrastructure. Someone will have to pay that bill, the government will have to borrow to do it, and your power bill will continue to increase because the more debt they carry, the more interest they have to pay, and there's only one place they get that money from, and that's in your power bill, and that's why you've seen wholesale power prices go up, amongst other things, by more than 70%.
With all due respect, Mr Nichols, the documents you gave us tell us how much the policies are going to cost, but they don't say how you will pay for them. And while I understand that releasing costings very close to the poll is tradition in this state, you've also refused to say specifically what you will do to address debt. Would you be willing to give those specifics now?
Sonia, I've made it very clear that we'll account for all of our expenditure when we release our costings, and we'll relieve both the expenditure measures and the savings measures at the same time, and that will show that under an LNP government the debt will be less than the current projected debt that we're seeing from the Labor Party, which is heading towards an eye-watering and record-breaking $81.1 billion.
Mr Nichols, sorry, another one.
Sorry, Ebony. Yeah.
New South Wales look like they're going to introduce a plan that would use your toll fees to help reduce your car registration. Is that something that an LNP government would endorse or look at?
No.
Why not?
Why not? I think Queenslanders already pay enough tolls. And we've also, Ebony, made a commitment to freeze car registration for the first 3 years of an LNP government, and that'll save motorists up to $200, depending on the type and size of vehicle they drive.
But I think what New South Wales are doing is, if you use the toll roads a heap of times, something like $1,300 worth in a year, then you get your rego for free. The difference in New South Wales, of course, is that a lot of their tunnels are publicly owned, where ours are all privately owned. But is there some way you could look at? It would help congestion, no doubt, if more people were using the tunnels.
I think at this stage of proceedings, before you consider any of those sorts of actions, there's a couple of things that need to happen. Firstly, you need to provide a good, reliable and efficient railway network, and we don't have that in Queensland, so people have an alternative to their cars. Secondly, you need to address the existing congestion that's on our roads, so roads such as the M1 at the Gold Coast, which becomes a traffic jam far too regularly, so that people again have a viable alternative to using a toll road. I think those are the first 2 priorities for a government here in Queensland first.
Well, I think we're done here, so please join me in thanking Mr Nichols for joining us today.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, mate. Thank you.
We're just going to do a lucky door prize. Now we're just going to draw the lucky door prize. If it's around here somewhere.
He's a very experienced card drawer out there, let me tell you. Okay, Chris Mountford, you have to give it back. Where's Chris? Hand up over in the corner there.
If you want to visit the Queensland Media Club website for a visual of today's recording, it should be up at some point. That's powered by JPL Media. You can also visit our website to keep informed of upcoming speakers and dates, or download past speeches as well. Our next event will be this Friday, when the Queensland Premier addresses the club in her final major address of this election. I'd also once again like to acknowledge our naming rights sponsors, Brisbane Airport Corp, Civil Contractors Federation and Griffiths University, and all our other sponsors as well. If you would like to receive information on the Queensland Media Club season, please drop your business card in the bowl at the registration desk on your way out. Brings us to the end of the luncheon. Thanks very much for joining us.